Hello all, a nice tale here, bringing you another knife review, and I've noticed that a few of my last ones have been a little rambly, so I want to speed things up and keep things a little more brisk and moving along today. We're looking at the LTK Love Them Knives Rezult, manufactured by We. Love Them Knives is a YouTuber like myself, but much more experienced. Go check his channel out. And check his designs out, because he's got a couple. I'm kind of hoping he does a few more. He seems to be pretty good at designing knives. Let's jump into, before we jump into specifications, let's just do a little overview here. We got a titanium handle, G10 inlays with texture on them, and the titanium is also textured. If you can see that, yeah, there we go. It is a button lock, using this traditional plunge. It is a drop point, I guess you'd call that a clip point. It's a straight stonewashed in 20 CV. It has a deep carry clip, though it is a milled clip, not Wee's typical clip, that mounts from the back of the knife and can be reversed. So this is ultra deep carry with flat screws underneath. I like to see that. And being a button lock, it's nice that it can be reversed. This is a flipper that has a fuller that can be used for the reverse flick and surprisingly easily for the thumb flick. That's weirdly easy. It's one of the easiest ones I think I've ever had. Now I think about it, for some reason that thumb flick just works on this knife. Now we can look at specs. Or, yeah, sure. 3.5 inch blade, 4 5/8 on the handle, and 8 1/8 overall. The clip does stick out a little bit more. Quick comparisons to the Civivi Elementum, small knife, and the Civivi Conspirator, full size. As you can see, while it looks like it's a decent bit larger than the Conspirator, it's not that much larger. The blade length is a hair larger, the handle length is a hair larger, you got the clip that sticks out a little further. But overall, it's definitely within that full size range. This is also not a particularly tall knife. In the open and closed position, it is a bit trimmer than the Conspirator in both regards. It is, of course, bigger than the Elementum. The one area where it does beat the Conspirator is thickness. Not by a lot, but it is thicker. And that's the reason for that is these rather thick slabs of titanium. There's a quite a bit of mass of titanium here. Yes, it's milled out on the exterior for weight reduction. It's not milled out on the inside, but yeah, there's a decent amount of titanium in this knife. Let's take a quick weight measurement. 4.52. Okay, so it's an ounce over what would be an ounce an inch. So ratios, people may not like that, but this is not a heavy knife to carry, despite having this very solid and thick titanium and feeling very solid in the hand. It's not a heavy knife to carry. We'll do a quick check for hardware with the T8. Pivot is T8. Unfortunately, the rest of the screws on this knife are T6. I wish they were T8. If I had to guess, I'd say LTK probably wanted them to be T8, but We likes using their T6s, so you kind of got what you got. Maybe a version 2 could update that. Bringing in the calipers. Handle thickness, 5.2, or not 5.2, 522 thousandths. A little over half an inch, I think a tad bit thicker than the Conspirator. Blade stock is 125 thousandths. Not thick. Pretty close to ideal in my opinion. I like that thickness. And behind the edge, we have a pretty thin blade down there. I want to say that drops down to about 14 to 15 thousandths. I have not had to sharpen this knife, but I have used this knife a decent amount. It's really held up well. I mean, the blade's cleaned off. There's a tiny little bit of gunk still on the blade, but there's some fuzz in the handle. But yeah, no, the blade steel is held up pretty well. I know that we and most Chinese companies tend to do their 20 CV at 59 to 61, which is, in my opinion, totally unacceptable. But this one seems to be holding up well and retaining an edge pretty well. Personally, I think 61 to 63 is ideal for M390. I would be somewhat willing to accept 60 to 62 if we are getting on the higher end of 60 consistently. But you're not really getting the properties out of M390/20CV, which are basically the same thing, if you're not up there. You're not gaining enough toughness to compensate for the loss in edge retention. Either way, it is a stainless steel, so you don't have to worry about corrosion, which is nice. And it is a premium steel, even though we've seen it so much that I think people are starting to not look at it as premium. It is quite a super steel. This knife is centered. No side to side. No up and down. And I'm not going to do it right now, but I have spine whacked this thing, and it held up perfectly fine. If I had to say, I'd say that Civivi and we are probably doing the best button locks. Premium and budget. They're, in my experience, the most reliable, the best functioning. Overall, I think they've sort of nailed it more than any other company and are consistent at it. Button locks are not my favorite form of lock, but yeah, these ones are good. And I'd be more inclined to trust this brand than some others with the button lock. There is no stick. There is a little bit of a drag on the but it's not stick. It honestly just feels like the lock doesn't want to disengage, so it's got a little bit of drag and friction when you're doing so, which kind of makes it feel more reliable, honestly. It's quite nice. Wii's button locks particularly are probably the best I've experienced on any knife. As I just deployed it into the table. Stop pin. It's up here in the open position. The plunge lock is the closed position. It's underneath the flipper tab. So yeah, there's no problem with the choil. You are given a sharpening choil, but the plunge ends up here. I don't quite get that. It's really hard to see on this blade. No, you know what? I think the plunge ends about here. So they are giving you some life. They could have given you a lot more life considering the way this plunge grind is done, but you also won't have any trouble cutting in a choil, and it's relatively thin behind the edge with a relatively low angle or decently small bevel. So, which I assume is about 20 degrees per side, which is what most companies seem to be doing. I think. I wish that's a good topic to bring up actually right now. This is important. I think most companies in the specs of their knives on, say, vendors or something, should mention the edge angle for their knives. I want to know what this thing is at. Yes, I can, of course, sharpen it to whatever degree I want. But if I like the angle that it's at, and I come at this thing with, I don't know, maybe I'm an inexperienced sharpener, more even, I am an inexperienced sharpener, but even more so than I am already, and come at this thing with a 15-degree angle, and I find out quickly that, oh, this thing's thick behind the edge, because I didn't think to check that, and end up with a gigantic edge angle on the thing. I don't know. I think just for the sake of convenience and ease and knowing how to keep the knife looking the way you want it, I wouldn't mind seeing in the specifications the edge angles being mentioned for these knives. I think that'd be a good idea. And that was the worst, most stumbly way to say that, but yeah, I got it out there. Remember when I said I wasn't going to do that in this video? Yeah. Ergos. Ergos are fantastic. This thing is super neutral. You're a little bit far away from the edge. I wouldn't choke up like that. You can choke up to here and put yourself kind of half over this, which is still pretty comfortable. But the basic grip, the main grip, you have room to move around on. It's pretty darn ultra comfortable. You're not that far away from the edge. And the almost full flat grind makes this a pretty good slicer despite not having the tallest of blades. And thin. That's something else that we in Civivi do. Pretty good geometry. I think that helps make up for some of that traditional lower M390 heat treat that a lot of Chinese, particularly, companies do. Well, Italian companies too. Better geometry is just going to, I think, excel for M390, or in this case, 20CV. As far as fidgetability goes, this is a pretty fidgety knife. You've got the button, and the button can be used as a deployment method, which I didn't even mention. So yeah, and since it's mountable on both sides for the clip, it's really, really ambidextrous. And speaking of the clip is, it's much in the vein of a traditional deep carry clip, but it is, I think, technically a milled clip. It is titanium. It's got great retention. It's just got a lift instead of that flat space that Civivi and we like to do sometimes, the bill. This is pure rise, which is great. This clip works wonderfully. And as you can see, there is a hidden lanyard post for those people who care. So, it also makes a satisfying thwack when you deploy it. And that's a good way I would describe this. This is a very satisfying knife, weirdly satisfying. It is a knife that you get in hand, you say, okay, yeah, I get this, I kind of want to carry this and use this. And that's what I've done with it. And it's worked out pretty well. I haven't been too hard on it, but this is a knife that I would be more than willing to be a bit harder on. Not too hard, it's not heavy-duty, thick knife, but then again, if I'm going for a task that is heavy-duty and thick, I'm probably not pulling out my pocket knife, if I can help it. So, thoughts. This is a great knife. It's a good design. It's well executed. I wouldn't mind seeing a version 2 of this knife. Maybe make it just 2 inlays. Just put them in as big inlays. Work on the sharpening choil. Get rid of the T8s, maybe. Maybe even bring that edge back a little bit and put the sharpening choil up in there and just make the plunge further back. But beyond that, this knife is pretty darn good. And what's better is the price tag. This knife, when it first came out, was going for, I think the MSRP was $245. I saw it at $220. That's what I bought it at. And it's only available on White Mountain knives. I should mention that. That's important. There's two variants, this one and one with green G10 inlays. I believe the red variant is unfortunately out of stock. The green variant, however, is not. And like I said, I got mine when it was, I think it was on sale for $200. But it was typically not on sale at $220, with the original price saying something about $245. The last time I checked, this knife is pretty commonly on sale in that one variant that's left for about $180. That is an excellent price. That is a wonderful price. That is an extremely recommendable price. This is a good knife for that price. You are getting WE Fit and Finish on a slightly more simple knife than some of WE's more extreme or fancy designs. It's not the contoured or anything like that, but it is really well chamfered and rounded, and it is really well executed, and will, in my opinion, more than give pretty much anything in the $180 price point a pretty good run for its money. This is a contender, no matter what you're doing. I'm hoping that they're all finished and executed as well as mine is. I've only had experience with this one, but if the quality control is there, which it usually is pretty good on WE, yeah, this is a knife that you might want to check out, especially if you're looking for something that has the premium feel, but still not crossing into the territory where maybe it's too fancy that you don't want to use it. So you kind of get best of both worlds on this thing. And for that reason, it is recommendable. That's what I'm going to say about this knife. I like it. I want to see more. I want to see another version of this thing come out, maybe with some different inlay materials, like I said. Minor tweaks and changes. Yeah, I like this. You know what I'd even like to see? Kind of more of a spear point. Drop the point just a tiny hair. Do something like a spear point with this thing. That would look really good. Put a fuller all the way along. Yeah. He's got something here. I don't know if he plans to do more, but I hope he does. Good job, LTK. Like and subscribe if you want. Comment your thoughts. Comment if you have grabbed one of these. I don't know how many of them are left, and I think he's only done one run of them. They've stuck around longer than they probably should have, considering they are a really good knife. Let me hear what you have to say. That's all for me. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.